California-Mexico border authorities have issued a travel warning for U.S. residents planning to go to Baja, California after a weekend of chaos. The Mexican government believes drug gangs were responsible for setting vehicles on fire and road closures.
The U.S. consulate Tijuana has lifted shelter-in-place orders after a weekend of violent crime and kidnapping. At least 19 vehicles were set on fire in Mexicali, Ensenada, Tecate, Rosarito, and Tijuana by what the Mexican government believes is organized crime by drug gangs.
Today, we also say to organized crime, to those who are committing these crimes, that in Tijuana we will remain active, taking care of the citizens. We also ask them to collect the bills from those who have not been paid what they are owed, not from the families, not from the citizens who work, because we are also watching over them. We are in coordination, and the 3,000 members of the National Guard, our 2,000 policemen, and the entire government apparatus will go out to protect Tijuana if necessary.
The Mexican border cities of Tijuana and Mexicali, along with Rosarito and Ensenada, have been hit by gang violence that included vehicles being set ablaze and road blockades. The U.S. consulate in Tijuana instructed its employees to shelter in place until further notice around midnight because of late Friday's violence.
Security has been recovered. Personnel from the National Guard, Mexican Army, State Public Security, and Municipal Public Security, as well as the prosecutors' offices, are distributed. Today, a meeting was held for the coordination of all public security activities, as I repeat, to reestablish and maintain social peace in the state of Baja California.
Few people ventured out on the streets of Tijuana on Saturday, and many of the bus and passenger van services stopped running, leaving some residents unable to get to where they were going. Some transportation services resumed later in the day.
So yesterday they implemented the curfew, and if you look at the border, the busiest border in the whole world, there's so little going on, and I feel really sorry for the economic negative impact that these recent criminal activities have on the people here.
Officials said one person was wounded and 17 suspects were detained, including 7 in Tijuana and 4 each in Rosarito and Mexicali. The area around Tijuana is a lucrative drug trafficking corridor which has since become a battleground between various gangs.
In response to increased gang activity, multiple enforcement agencies in Southern California conducted a sweep of arrests. Dozens were booked, and authorities say more similar operations are planned to happen soon.
On Friday, about 3 weeks after a child was shot in a gang-related incident, the San Bernardino police, along with officers from several agencies, arrested 42 people in a gang suppression sweep. San Bernardino Police Chief Darren Goodman said in a press release that the sweep was in response to increasing criminal gang activity in the city of San Bernardino. He added, recently a beautiful innocent 8-year-old girl was shot in the face by gang members as she played in front of her home. The police reported 30 felony arrests and 12 misdemeanor arrests. They recovered 16 firearms, 3 ounces of methamphetamine, 3 ounces of cocaine, a large amount of PCP, and 2 stolen vehicles. They say more criminal suppression sweeps will be happening in the near future. Jason Blair, NTD News, California.
After months of gathering signatures, the recall of Los Angeles District Attorney George Gascon has failed. The county clerk's office rejected thousands of signatures.
The Los Angeles County Clerk's Office reported that the effort to recall Los Angeles District Attorney George Gascon has failed to collect enough valid signatures. The office rejected just under 200,000 signatures. That put the campaign about 45,000 signatures short of the required number. The office wrote, quote, "The petition has failed to meet the sufficiency requirements and no further action shall be taken on the petition." The clerk's office reported that about 88,000 signatures were not registered to vote, around 44,000 signed more than once, and 32,000 had a different address. People in support of the recall can examine the signatures within 21 days.
Over the weekend, there was a sad anniversary for a woman in Southern California. She, along with others, rallied outside of a consulate, calling for the release of her imprisoned husband, who defended the people that were persecuted for their beliefs. NTD's Jackie Rios talked to her before hearing from rally goers.
Saturday marked the 5th year since Gao Zhishen, a respected human rights lawyer, disappeared in China. He represented faith groups that have been victims of the Chinese Communist Party's or CCP's persecution. For representing house Christians and Falun Gong practitioners, Gao has been detained and tortured on and off since 2006. His wife, Gong He, mentioned how Gao would take pro bono cases and dare to take cases that CCP didn't want lawyers to take.
I feel he's a very responsible person. At home, he was a good husband and a good father. So his sense of responsibility carried over to his work. So being a lawyer, he worked especially hard on his job. He worked as his responsibility and his mission. So when he wasn't struggling for an income, he'd have 1/3 of his cases as pro bono. So this really touched me too. He really used his talents to provide help to people who needed it, including free help. Even for Falun Gong or Christians, the CCP didn't allow him to take the cases, but he took them anyway. He used his kind heart and his profession to do that work.
Gong explained how she has lost family members due to the CCP's harassment.
More tragic thing is during these 5 years, the CCP continuously harassed Gao's older sister. Since she was always concerned for her little brother's well-being, whether he was dead or alive, she fell into depression. Finally, in May 2020, she drowned herself in a river. The local police wouldn't let my brother-in-law leave the area for fear he'd look for Gao. They took away his ID, forced him to sign documents at the station, and wouldn't let him leave. My brother-in-law was ill at that time. He needed to get medicine and see a doctor, but they always made things difficult for him. He eventually jumped off a building to his death.
To commemorate the 5-year anniversary, Gong and supporters of Gao gathered in front of the Chinese consulate in Los Angeles to call for his release.
I come here to support. I try to, together with other peoples, we hope that Mr. Gao Zhishen can be released and get his freedom, and he also can continue to fight for the people in China for their human rights.
We are here on behalf of Amnesty International because Gao Zhishen is a prisoner of conscience listed by Amnesty International, and our Group 22 have been working on this case since 2010. So every month we write letters to Gao Zhishen to call for his release. And we hope to do more for him to raise public awareness. We believe that Mr. Gao Zhishen should not be forgotten.
Felipe Alexander, a human rights lawyer who attended the rally, mentioned the difference between the rule of law for lawyers in China and the United States.
Because here I can take any cause I want. Often I even sue the American government on behalf of my clients if I feel that they've been egregious or they haven't been appropriate towards my clients. That is unthinkable in China. And so you have people like Mr. Gao who are brave enough to go against the establishment, who are brave enough to take on sensitive cases, and they're simply unable to do so.
Gong last heard from her husband on August 13, 2017. She says she follows his motto of being an upright citizen and helping others. Jackie Rios, NTD News, Los Angeles.
Before planes, the one way around the world was to hoist your sails and set off on the 7 seas. One sailing crew and its volunteers in the Bay Area are working to keep traditional sailing on deck. NTD's David Lam has the story.
These passengers have their hands full as they get to be sailors for the afternoon. They're on board a 132-foot wooden ship, assisting the crew to set sail in the San Francisco Bay.
I think today it was a really good sail. We got a lot of wind, especially later as we got closer to San Francisco and by Alcatraz, which is where it picks up and gets a lot of fun.
The $6 million ship took 7 years to build, has an 11-sail brigantine design, and comes with a deep history. It was named after an iconic and prolific shipbuilder from San Francisco. Now, the Matthew Turner is specially designed after another historical ship called the Galilee, which was built in the late 1800s. And it also held the fastest sail record from San Francisco to Tahiti.
Now parts of her are in San Francisco, parts of her are in Benicia, which is Matthew Turner's original shipyard location. Part of her is sunk in Sausalito, like literally a quarter mile from us.
The hybrid ship stands about 100 feet tall and produces her own energy harnessed from the wind. She regenerates her 2 electric motors when sailing. She's one of 2 ships from Call of the Sea, a non-profit in Sausalito that local sailors founded in 1985. Alan Olson, the co-founder, said he partnered with the San Francisco Police Department in the past to take students from youth reform schools out to sea.
It was a very, very powerful thing, and we could see how it was really changing these kids and how much they liked doing it.
All right, turns course, turns lower.
They're dedicated to sharing traditional maritime sailing and its deep history to today's youth with their floating classroom, a chance to sail on traditionally rigged vessels.
I think it's really fun. I mean, it's kind of cold, but I think it's like there's really pretty views and stuff. And I've been on the coast around here, and it's a really different perspective.
Come sailing, it's delightful, and I think it's a really important way to experience our environment and to understand that we used to live on top of the water more than just next to it.
I prefer being on water than on land, if that makes sense. So living on a boat, working on a boat, and just constantly sailing almost every single day, it's where I need to be.
Also, I think that young people don't realize how many options they have. They grow up in a bubble, and they don't really see outside of that bubble. But you put them on a ship and go someplace or spend some time on it, and all of a sudden they see other ideas.
Olson says it's a magical feeling that comes to him and those when they're out at sea as a calling.
You get out there at night or something, you go out there night watch and you're looking at the stars and you're looking out and all of a sudden you realize that you're basically sailing the universe, because that's what you see out there. And you see the sea, and it just broadens your view of where you are, and you're part of all of this too.
Call of the Sea's crew is sailing strong to keep traditional sailing in the Bay Area and beyond. David Lamb, NTD News, California.